Hello, everybody. It is Address the Sess. I guess this is like the makeup session. I know we were supposed to do it last week. I fell what we would call ill. Actually, I've been fighting something up until that point, and it just really started winning that fight because I'm weak. I don't really have the temerity to really put up with disease and germs and stuff like that. So anyway, we're doing it this week, and of course, Nick Robinson is here. Nick, everyone say hi to Nick.
Hi.
If you have not seen our new show, he and I together, bringing up Nick, I highly encourage you to do so. It's only in one place. It's not on YouTube. It's actually on the Revision 3 site. It's at revision3.com/games. We actually have some extra Q&A editions of Sessler something there as well. You might wonder why. We're trying to do an experiment. We're thinking about maybe doing something with the Revision 3 site because you can do things with that as opposed to YouTube. And it would be neat to try out some text, maybe some of those audio podcasts. I'm not promising anything, but if you and all of your friends go to that site and we see the numbers, who knows what we could do? We could have puppies. Well, maybe not puppies. Could we have puppies, Nick? Are we allowed to have
I'll have to check on that. But you're right, though. Text is really hard to do on YouTube. Text is not ideal.
It's not. It's part of this new video form or video drone, as Nick knows.
You'll find out in about 3 weeks. Yeah.
Anyhow, I don't know if maybe there's something in chat if you want to start bringing some people in.
Oh, yeah, sure. We've actually got some folks in here already. Let me go ahead and put on Elijah.
Hey, Elijah. Oh, Elijah, I think you're muted.
You got to unmute yourself. You click the little...
Hello, Adam. Sorry.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Where are you located?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. All right, not bad. Not bad at all. So what's on your mind? Is it the government shutdown, debt limit increase, or games?
Games at the present moment. Actually, the religious representation in them. It's
really?
a topic that not a lot of people talk about, but I wanted to bring up. I even wrote about it in one of my blog posts. There aren't a lot of games that seem to present it that well. There's most of them. It's like in Dragon Age, it's just sort of there. It explains the lore and everything, but it doesn't fit at the core of the franchise or anything. Oddly enough, the game I found that might be the most convincing game for religion would be Dead Space, because on a mechanics level, it's a lot more tied into it.
No. When you're talking about the idea that the kind of the representation, be it probably not real, but kind of an invented religion, something that actually feels like it has some kind of foundation to it. Obviously, in Dead Space, it is. I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's a little on the dangerous side. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much. That's actually a really interesting thought. Did you come to any conclusions as to why you don't see that kind of attention paid to sort of expanding on the tenets of invented religions and games?
Well, there's the default fact that they don't want to upset the atheist member of the audience, I would imagine, but there's also the subtle religious connotations to the gameplay aspects, actually, because the necromorphs, they're always trying to grab you, they're always trying to pull you down and convert you, which is a lot like how, if you have your own belief, people are constantly trying to convert you. But as to... Sorry, go ahead.
No. It's interesting because I see what you're saying. They don't offend atheists. I actually am not much of a believer. I would call myself more of a secularist. But I've never actually had that kind of reaction to any type of religious representation in games. What I do find interesting, though, is I've wondered if there's a timidity because if you have an invented religion in the game, people might try to read some sort of allegorical connotation to an existing Judeo-Christian religion, and in doing that, people might actually take offense.
Yeah. There's that too. I'm afraid, unlike some of us who are a lot more quiet, a lot of Christians are a lot more prone to getting angry and aggravated. But
most people, despite any spiritual background, seem to have a temperament towards finding offense. But anyway, Elijah, I'm getting in your way.
No, it's fine. It's just I would love to see more games take this aspect of it because everything Would it be all right to actually post it in the chat, a link to the article for the people to see?
By all means. Okay. I would actually like to check that out too. You know what's interesting is that you could see the way that, if you look at religion as sort of guidance, a set of rules of how you interact with the world and with other people, there is that kind of possibility that you could use a religion inside of a game really as a gameplay mechanic because, it helps kind of inform kind of the core fundamental aspect of playing a game, which is the interactivity and what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, like in Dark Souls, a lot about Dark Souls is similar. You're constantly going through hardship after hardship, but you stay to it and you keep fighting.
And you know, I think the game that stands out to me in terms of actually not effectively, in a very strange way, sort of representing existing religion is like games like Bayonetta, which have absolutely sort of no spiritual foundation. I mean, it's almost like kind of arbitrary uses of stuff that comes out of the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I've always found it kind of just this fascinating secularized treatment of what might be some of the more lurid or histrionic aspects of sort of religious iconography.
I know, and the sad thing is sometimes they actually pass up some really neat ideas. Like they always love to use Nephilim in games, Nephilim for everything, and Darksiders, and Bayonetta, and El Shaddai.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual concept of them, you could create an awesome fantasy RPG just about the Nephilim back in the day, because they were supposed to be these half angel, half men, great heroes. There's even suggestions that for Christianity, that might have actually tied into all the myths about Thor and everything, and Hercules, that they might have actually been Nephilim for some people. So you could do that. You could do so much with that material.
But you know what? It would require research.
Yeah. We need Call of War as the cartel. We need more of that.
we might be finding the rub there. Hey, Elijah, you hang on. Let's see if we can get some other people in here. Nick, do you want to grab someone? And thank you very much, Elijah. That really was an unexpected and very interesting. Let's see if we can get some more of this discussion to come back to this topic. I really like it.
A pleasure to be present.
There's some sort of allusions in the chat to game publishers using religion occasionally to, like, how was it put? It was like using it to bring attention to a game as a free marketing tool. I think what comes to mind for me is the like fake protesters against the Dante's Inferno game a couple years ago.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far to say. I mean, that was actually the game itself was far more respectful of Dante's work, and yes, Dante's work was highly reverent, but I don't think the transitive properties of association go from reverence to EA.
Well, actually.
I mean, it was definitely shock value in the marketing campaign.
Can I say something real quick, actually, on Dante's Inferno, though? Speaking as a Christian, the sad thing is it actually kind of touched upon in Paradise Lost, of all things, better than the other ones. In fact, when I was playing it back in the day, it reminded me a lot more of, like, so someone wanted to make an action sequel Michael Bay to Paradise Lost.
I thought of Paradise Lost, and I thought of the second part of Goethe's Faust, where Faust is in hell and he meets Helen of Troy, which I do think there was some effect from Dante that helped sort of manage that plane. Yeah. But I had the same actual reaction to you, that more interesting sort of Milton questioning rather than Dante's kind of just explication of Inferno and Purgatory and Paradise. No, that was a very, very good point. Nick,
let's bring in who do we got here? This might not be a real name, but Dalo Riance. Oh, wait, no, I was reading it wrong. That's a lowercase I. There we go.
Dalo, how are you doing?
I totally read that wrong.
How are you doing?
Hey.
Doing fine. Where are you reaching us from?
Riverside, California.
Okay, I was trying to figure out. The sun is pouring through those windows, and you seem to be doing everything you can to keep it out. So that
it's
was
raining
narrowing
out here.
down the places you could be reaching us from. So, how are you doing?
Yeah. Currently, right now, just trying to get into here. I've been trying to get in for like the last 3 sessions. So, I was kind of bummed out last week. So
you are a winner.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome, brother.
Well, what's on your mind?
Well, first, let me just say it's an honor to actually speak with you. I actually grew up with you when you were on GameSpot, so this is kind of a little surreal for me.
So now you're old and I'm old. I'm older.
Well, we're all getting old. We all get, as my uncle always told, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, it's one of the few inevitabilities.
But my question for today, or at least one that I've been trying to think of, which is like, in the last couple weeks, like Sega purchased Atlas, so I was kind of curious, like, what was your reaction to the whole Sega Atlas purchase, to say the least? Because that's been on my mind for a while.
I mean, look, Sega's parent company, Sammy, which makes pachinko machines, doing just fine. I mean, so that's been allowed to kind of allow Sega to kind of fumble through the darkness, as I would say they've done for the past few years. I think it's nice that they picked up Atlas, who I think has a wonderful stable of games, most notably, Persona. And yeah, I think, though, Atlas never was all that adept at knowing how to kind of get those games out in the U.S., how to find an audience, and to help grow. I mean, niche is good, but it's not something you can really build a company on in perpetuity. And Sega, because of Sega's history in the game industry, obviously because of Sega's Japanese origins, I think there's something there where maybe some of those properties can be given a little bit more love, a little bit more financing. And I would like to think that Atlas also has the ability to find those interesting, really traditional but experimental developers that are out there in Japan. I mean, remember the original Demon's Souls was Atlas, and I think the only way that From Software could have had such a harebrained idea for a game actually make it to market is a company like Atlas. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there. But these are both companies that sometimes don't make the best decisions. So it's something I'm crossing my fingers on, because of anyone to purchase Atlas, it kind of runs sensible to me.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked at that Sega's not my first choice, because ever since like this last generation, Sega's localization of their particular titles haven't particularly done well. Yeah. So, and I understand video games are a business.
Who would you have picked? I'm curious.
Katakawa Games from Japan, because they just started getting into their own thing with video games after Killers did, and they just started I forget their new game, what it was called. I think it was called Dragon or something. But
yeah.
But personally, I would have preferred. I'm just happy that Nintendo, Sony, nor Microsoft bought them, because they're better. Half their business is localization.
But also, I'm glad a company like Capcom didn't get them.
Capcom's got its own problems.
Persona
exactly.
on Lost Planet 4.
I mean, that's the thing, is that Sega, for all of the problems they've been having, I think still will preserve the integrity of the product better than a lot of the other publishers out there. It's still, there's a trade-off. I have to say. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, now that Atlas is part of Sega, I just hope that they're going to bring over that Sega will allow Atlas to bring over the Sega's own personal properties. Like, I'm still hoping for Phantasy Star Nova that was announced for Vita. So I'm just hoping that might be a prospect as opposed to something that's that's hoping and dreaming at this point.
I think, judging by the fact that more and more, like, it's looking less and less likely that Phantasy Star Online 2 is ever going to come out here, even though they said it would, and they showed off translated builds of it. I'm starting to get really nervous about how much they trust that property on this continent.
Well, I mean, did the PSOs actually do well in the U.S.? I mean, I
don't really know.
I think Phantasy Star Online, when it was on the Dreamcast, worked. I'm trying to remember what version that was on the Xbox 360.
I think there were a few Phantasy Stars. I think there was a Phantasy Star
and
Universe.
I think one had a separate or something weird.
Yeah. The only MMO that was on the 360 was the Final Fantasy. What was it? 7, 12.
But Phantasy Star Universe. I'm sorry, I may have gotten the two mixed up in my head, because it is the end of the day. But Phantasy Star Universe on the 360, I remember that came out when there was not, like, the 360 had launched and there were no games. After the initial launch, that came out, and that still couldn't seem to find an audience, which I think unfortunately said that there were just certain things about the Phantasy Star Online world that has a very, very core audience, but they couldn't find a way to kind of bring in a larger audience as well.
Yeah, but my point was with it, and this will be my final thing on it, is I just hope Atlas, or at least Sega will let Atlas bring out some of those, not just Phantasy Star, but maybe some of the other stuff that Sega normally would have not done. But I'm still worried because, like, recently Sega West is pretty much like a skeleton company almost, outside of like Sonic.
It's not great, I can say that. But you know what? I think also with the increased attention on the digital distribution of games, that could really kind of work to our favor, really, in kind of seeing these titles, maybe not spend the money to press and print them, but hey, we can download them. I'm hoping for a future like that where we can have access to games that have previously been sort of locked in a territory. Once again, it's a hope. And maybe there's a lurking marketer that's paying attention to us having this conversation right now.
Hopefully.
So everyone wave,
hopefully.
Phantom Marketer. Hi.
Hello, marketer.
Yeah.
Please don't make Sonic a persona.
Sonic Frost. All right, let's
So
see
Nick,
who else.
you want to grab something from the chat as we decide who else we're going to bring in?
Probably the last thing we say about Atlas for today, but Kurapika92 makes the point that Atlas has been doing localization of niche Japanese titles in what he sees as exactly the right way, and makes the point that they were the only profitable portion of Index Corp before Sega bought them.
Guys, I think I've always known Atlas to being exceptional when it comes to localization. That is something that Sega bought. Mm-hmm. So this could not just be something they're going to keep with Atlas, but then could also be used for other Sega games. So I wouldn't think that they're just buying a bunch of titles and just sending everyone off to sail free. I mean, that's probably one of those valuable assets outside of the IPs that's inside of Atlas. So I think
that's half of Atlas's business. They localize a lot of stuff. Yeah. That's why I was wondering about that.
Maybe we can resurrect the Dot Hack series because maybe someone's clamoring for that.
Maybe.
That would be me.
I bet it would be Dalo.
Here's Bill Stortz.
Bill, how are you doing, Bill?
Good, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Where are you reaching us from?
I'm calling you from Parma, Ohio, up near Cleveland. So.
Nice. And I have to say, your background says this is the man's study. Am I right?
I'm actually, it would be full back there, but I'm actually in the process of moving right now. So.
I saw the guitar, the picture, and the kind of I'll put that on a shelf and deal with it later type of aesthetic going on.
Exactly. Hey, you've talked a lot recently about growing older and being a gamer, and I've got about a decade on you. I'm going to be turning 50 at the beginning of next year.
You look a hell of a lot better for 50 than I'm even doing at 40. Yeah, so props to you there, Bill.
Well, thank you.
You look younger than my dad, and he's a decade younger than you.
Keep them coming, guys. I'll take all of them.
Well, if you look at Stan Lee, that guy's still kicking.
Absolutely. I mean, Stan's like a teenager if you ever meet him. He just has more energy than any man you've ever seen.
Yes, and I'm going to bite my tongue with what I was about to say next. Go on, Bill.
I have a problem. I've been gaming since the very beginning. With my age, I was there at the dawn. I remember the first Pong machines showing up in arcades, the whole 9 yards. And my biggest problem this time is this is the first generation of new consoles that I'm having a real hard time getting excited about. They don't seem to be the paradigm jumps or the quantum leaps that we've had in the past. They just seem to be slight refinements. For instance, I never quite understood why when we had the Xbox One announcement, other than the security elements, it just seemed like it was just the 360 only faster.
Well, I see where you're coming from, and I think part of the problem is that they don't know what they want to do with these boxes. And I think there probably was some element of security that was why they designed it that way. But after many months of just talking with people I know at Microsoft, I think they really wanted to not make a console again. And they kind of were looking at a future about 10 years out that isn't a practical future for us to be in now. Right. And they had built those assets into the box, yet somehow didn't realize that that would be of nominal interest to us because it doesn't play with our reality. Okay. And at the same time, both Sony and Microsoft putting so much of this hope on the cloud, which cloud means ephemera in my mind. So,
and I always so worry about when all these internet providers start to do metered internet.
Yeah,
that's going to be a negative for these systems that are so heavily based on transfer of data across your internet connections.
I think the way I start to see that, I recognize that problem a lot, is with these consoles, we're seeing yet again consumer products that are really putting a lot of attention on internet, on the speed of the internet to both have our entertainment and then for many people to get their work done. And I think that will become an economic pressure that the federal government is going to have to deal with, because I think the only way to deal with metered internet is going to have to be federal regulation. Someone has to step in, FCC, deal with Comcast, deal with Time Warner. But I would like to think that the introduction of something like a console that might be affected by something like that in the short term can also be a tipping point that can really force this discussion on the level that it needs to be discussed at, in terms of stuff like that with the internet. I think where I get excited about the new consoles outside of I have that weird hardwired male thing where I like new things.
Oh yeah.
Is that it might bring with it new IPs, some experimental designs. It tends to be kind of a rebirth. We have to wait this long to get to our springtime, and this is when we can start to see stuff. Because I've been just so fatigued with the number of sequels, with all of that this,
well, absolutely.
It helps facilitate that. But in terms of, oh my God, I can't believe I have a new box, I'm with you on that one. And I have not been all that excited. And probably you've had the same reaction that the level of fanboyism this time around more than others strikes me as strange and almost Pavlovian, because I don't see there's no there to get anybody that worked up to call each other names that don't need to be said.
Well, the second coming of the Sega and Nintendo fight.
Right. I just don't think that the touchpads, which are really about the only technical innovation I can really see on the new boxes other than stronger processors. We're not having a quantum leap on graphics. We're not really going to go, like when we went from 480i up to 720p. That was a huge, and you could see that instantly. It was a very quick one.
Well, but that was sort of what needed to happen. We have kind of reached what that height is in terms of the graphical fidelity. Because now it really comes down to what the artist and the time and the resources can allow. The one thing I do believe, and this is something that we really can't appreciate yet because we don't have the games in our hands, is the ability to render larger worlds without having to deal with load screens. Also, what I have wanted to see so much in games is more independent AI with independent animations that go along with it. And that's something that we're not going to be able to get from just a 5-minute demo of something. It's something that we're going to have to see in the games. And there's intimations of that promise, be it Watch Dogs or be it the new Dead Rising game. But, yeah, it's something that I'm holding out hope for, that it's kind of this more, oh, God, I'm going to say the word, immersive qualities that we're going to benefit from. It's funny, I was just reading an academic essay right before this that was using the word immersion, and it was absolutely the only word that could be used, talking about that sense of presence in the world, and you need these things to be accurate for your eye to sort of read it, for you to really sort of start to believe that world. That's where I think we could go. But yeah, everything I've said, if you survey just what we've seen and how they presented it to us, it doesn't get the heart pumping like I would say previous generations have.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I can ever remember not seeing that much more than like these just being a little bit better versions of the previous generation.
Well, also, there was a drum roll. We were already getting hot and heavy with the lead up to the console launches.
Oh, absolutely.
And Sony and Microsoft, for reasons that have left me actually concerned, have been very buttoned up about saying anything, showing anything. I am not getting invited up until this point. Since E3, I have not been invited to many events, if any, of significance to look at the new consoles and to look at the new games. Yes, people are working on them. They're trying to lock down the hardware. But even like the BS dog and pony shows, just to kind of keep that fanfare and that attention. I had fully expected it. And instead, everyone went to go hibernate. And I don't know whether that should be something that I think they're being responsible, or if there's something that's being hidden, or if there's a lot of concern.
Well, why would they do that right now, considering everything that they thought was going to be a positive got turned into a negative by the people and the public? I mean, I know that you saw people with deer in headlight looks at how they reacted to, well, this is a great thing. Why are you calling us Satan here? I don't understand. I get where they're coming from, and I think maybe Sony was surprised by the positive reaction. Microsoft was so surprised by the negative reaction, they both didn't know what to do. I'm fairly certain that within the next 2 weeks, we're going to start to hear substantive stuff, and finally I've been waiting to do that part of my job, and so I've been kind of chomping at the bit. But yeah, it should be very, very interesting. Hey, Nick, do you want to grab one more comment from the chat?
Yeah,
and then we bring someone in?
This is an interesting one from Google+. Joey Leon asks, after the issues that occurred during GTA Online's first couple days out, do we see next-gen consoles day one suffering the same fate?
Ooh, that could be bad.
I don't think it'll be...
It's something that occurred to me, but thinking
this is why I don't think that's possible. Not as many... Neither one of those consoles will sell as many copies as GTA 5 did in 24 hours.
Okay.
And then no one's going to buy exactly
Very
the same game for either one of those consoles. I mean, for all the complaints about Grand Theft Auto Online, and I'm going to say, the fact that Rockstar said there's going to be problems, and then people feel like they got ripped off, and I'm going to be frank, if you only bought that game for online, I need to meet you and actually study you, because the single-player game is what obviously they were known for. It's what it's all about. When you looked at those numbers of what it sold, if you could not foresee the fact that if even a quarter of the people who bought that game try to get online all at the same time, this thing is going to blow up. Just look at what happened with the healthcare exchanges. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
these are those things that unfortunately I think we're going to have to get used to rocky starts, because you just can't figure out the stress test until you put it out there in the wild. The fact is, the way that they set up Grand Theft Auto Online, where it really didn't, it came those weeks after the initial release, I think it really pointed out that what you're properly buying is the single-player version, with the assumption that this will slowly work itself into what Grand Theft Auto Online is going to be probably 3-4 months down the line. So I don't think we're going to see that with the console launches whatsoever. I think that there might be other technical problems with the console launches, but I don't think it'll be on the back end.
Well, they've already said there's going to be a 15 to 20-minute patch for the Xbox One. There has to be an equitable one for the PS4, I would imagine.
I think there's going to have to be something. I mean, the HDCP thing, which they say they're going to integrate at a later date.
Right.
Sony might be wise, and if they think that out of the box you have something very functional, they'd wait until maybe a month down the line. So you don't have something as kind of striking as, I bought it, it's patched. That's just not the best PR out there.
Nintendo had to learn that kind of the hard way with the Wii U patches.
The Wii U.
Oh, and the Wii U is the one time I actually called customer support. I got confused.
Really?
Yeah.
How did that go down?
You could not find my wireless connection. And I probably had to go out and buy I had to buy a hardwire adapter.
I've heard people actually having that it doesn't recognize certain routers.
Yeah. So, Nick, you want to bring someone new in?
Yeah, let's talk to Scott.
Scott. How are you, Scott? Oop, you're muted. Unmute.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think I would have figured it out by now.
It happens
I would like to applaud everyone. Everyone has gotten so much faster about unmuting. Scott, you were one of the best examples.
I had my mouse hovering right there, and I was like press it when they open, but I'm going to try still.
So where are you reaching us from?
I am from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I also work for a computer hardware website, writing news post editorials and stuff like that.
Is that why you? It looks like you're in a snazzy office with the wall matching your shirt.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that your favorite color?
Actually, no, green is, but no, I just happened to get this shirt over the weekend from a summit I was at.
Well, this is probably one of the most remarkably aesthetically pleasing backgrounds I think we've ever seen on the show. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I sometimes go on podcasts, so I kind of have it set up like this for
Nicely done.
those times.
Nicely done. So what's on your mind, Scott?
Oh, a lot of things. Kind of as the week's gone by, kind of pushing more stuff on the stack. But several months ago, you were talking about Activision kind of milking franchises.
Yeah.
And
was it just Activision milking franchises?
I think Ubisoft is there too.
Yeah,
that was what.
If you really look at most of the major publishers, they're all like Farmer John, just like I got to get more out of the teat, more
harvest every year. Yeah.
Yeah, that was what the viewer was saying on Address Sess, but
so
he was saying it's
on
bad
that
for
topic,
everyone. He was saying it's bad for everyone, but it seemed to me like there was one group that it actually was good for. So Activision, as we know, kind of milked Tony Hawk, then they milked Guitar Hero. They're kind of milking Call of Duty. They're now going after Skylanders, things like that. It seems to me like it's bad for developers because they get ramped up big and then they hit that point where it tips off and they shrink. It's kind of bad for consumers because it gets flooded and kind of just pushed out there. But Activision always seems to have the next one, right? So it seems to be okay for them because they milk it, it crushes, they move to a different studio or they move the studio to a different project, and it kind of keeps going. It seems like Activision, the one who would be the one to stop it, would be the one who's benefiting most from it. It looks like they actually are.
But Scott, they're benefiting financially. I mean, Black Ops 2, until Superman Returns came out and then Grand Theft Auto 5, was the single largest sale of entertainment for a 24-hour period. It works for them. I think what Activision has done so brilliantly is they are so not reliant upon the core audience. I mean, they have Skylanders and Call of Duty. Those numbers can't just be the core. It's this massive, this is the thing I play every year. I'm going to go buy my copy. And they really have kind of hit that perfect point. I think it's still going to be tenuous with Call of Duty because at some point the new equivalent to Call of Duty is going to come around and get everyone really, really excited. But I don't think we're going to see that this year. I don't even know if we're going to see that next year. It may take a little bit of time for it to ramp up to something like that. But no, I agree. I think that Activision definitely, they're the ones. I mean, to be fair, Ubisoft, I think, is benefiting as well. I mean, Assassin's Creed sells better every single year. We'll find out this year with 4. What's that?
How is that possible? It seemed like they had such amazing sales the first couple of iterations of it. How do they keep finding new people to buy these games?
They're using the lost strategy. They just keep making the plot more and more confusing.
Yeah, well, there's that. But I also think I think people are picking it up over time, and then they want to get with a new one. The marketing for Assassin's Creed 3 was so strong and so pervasive. San Francisco is not a town that tends to get blanketed in ads for entertainment. It's just not a big enough market. You tend to see that in LA. You tend to see that in New York City. You would see it in Chicago. And when I moved back here in October, actually, I was just amazed at how much Assassin's Creed 3 marketing was all over the place. And so if they're doing that in San Francisco, that's got to be happening in other sort of mid-sized cities across the country. Now, the one caveat to that is if you're spending that much in marketing and you sell a lot, you're getting a lot less back in profits.
Well, yeah.
So I don't know how much we know that there's a lot of revenue with Assassin's Creed, but how much they kind of get to take back to the bank and laugh about and smoke $100 bills or franc notes or euros or whatever they have over there in Europe right now. Yeah. So Scott, I mean, do you see a future with more year after year iterations?
I kind of do, and the problem is that people keep telling, you've probably heard it a bunch of times where it's like, Activision or Ubisoft should stop doing that. They're talking to the one person that's going to benefit from doing it.
Yeah, I know. Look, I'm going to say one of those things that gets me in trouble. Gamers, hardcore gamers, us and a lot of people who probably are griping about, stuff on YouTube right now, you are not indicative of the whole. There's a larger whole, and Activision and Ubisoft doesn't sit around worry they've hurt the feelings or they're not satisfying the unique tastes and desires of people who are that deep into video games. You're going to buy the game, or you're not going to buy the game. In fact, marketing doesn't even matter for most of us. It's that larger audience. That's who they're trying to reach. That's where the dollars really become significant and they become profitable. And, all that kind of rancor and stuff, I think it affects the development team. But those publishers, those guys with the money bags, those guys who are actually in the suits and making the decisions, I think we actually start to come across as kind of this rush of plebeians, and we passed the Roman Republic and we're way into the Empire, and it's just all kind of sound and fury, signifying poop. So
I was also wondering if I could point to the elephant in the room. It's been a few weeks since Address of Sess was on, and since then, the Steam box.
Oh dear.
Oh boy.
We're not going to talk about anything else now.
Well, no, but you know what? Raise your hands, guys who are here, and then Nick, if you want to keep a look at so what the comments are saying.
Yeah,
How
sure.
many people are that excited about the Steam box?
It's not a Steam box specifically.
In a primal way, not in an intellectual, we're going to shove it to the man kind of way.
It's not a specific thing, and that's I think they have a bit of a marketing problem, probably because they're such a small team, and they never needed to actually have a marketing background yet. But the more they speak about it, first off, every feature of a Steam box has been announced that will come to Steam Client too, so you don't need the Steam box. You can have a PC with Steam running on it, or install SteamOS or whatever to have it happen. It seems to me like what they're doing is they're looking at the Roku market and they're looking at the console market, and they're saying PCs would crush here if they knew that they could. So it seems to me mostly like they're trying to say, if you want to have a, what would normally be considered a netbook style device that just plays Netflix and streams. And now can stream a game from your PC because there's a Steam client on that too. They can go in there, and maybe some developers would want to try to market to see if they can put a GeForce Titan or something in it.
Also, home theater PCs. That's actually what I'm considering for with my place. I could take down my computer and hook it up to the TV, but my parents have their own home theater one. If I could just stream it, that's the main thing that's only ever actually sold me on the Steam OS is if you could make it so that someone can make their PC anywhere in the house, the NVIDIA Shield officially loses the 5 people who still cared about buying it.
Well, the NVIDIA Shield was basically like a Steam box, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, I think it comes down to what this OS looks like and what the interface is like. Because once again, I think that's why I'm like, okay, that's kind of nice, Steambox. I don't have a problem with it. It's just, they're once again, it is like, it's different boxes that are modifiable. Okay, how is this different from a PC? But if that OS can be something that my mom can use, and they can manage that streaming, and they can get that media streaming going, then we're talking about something really, really interesting. I mean, look, I think that we're seeing this announcement as something we don't even have a picture of because there's some anxiety about what Apple's next move is going to be. And that's where I think the real competition is with a company like Apple, is their ability to really condition their consumer base to know how to use the interface. It's not great, but an elegant way of doing these things that are a little bit difficult and frightening to most people that don't have some type of technological experience.
But then there's a caveat to that too.
Yeah,
Jared Humphreys wants to know if any of us have gotten a chance to go hands-on with the Steam controller.
I'm not aware of that being offered to anyone to go hands-on with.
I think a couple
developers, it's just a concept.
Developers have probably gotten to play with it.
Yeah, there's a prototype that Tommy Reffinis, one of the Meat Boy guys, got to play with, and he wrote a little something about it.
I think Diverged did too.
But the one thing I cannot remember, maybe you guys can correct me, I don't believe that Valve is making the Steam controller. It will yet again be licensed to other parties for manufacturing and distribution.
So is it like a 3DO situation where somebody's just going to make the games and somebody else will make the console?
That's what we're looking at here. I think Valve's kind of savvy. It's like they're not taking on the really big risk, which is manufacturing, but at the same time, you don't kind of own the messaging in the same way because that's what sort of their licensing agreements, the people who are holding those agreements, that's what they're going to do. And then there's this XI3 Piston, which is completely baffling me and seems like they're like a rogue agent in the Steambox family.
They were a failed Kickstarter. They were a failed Kickstarter, and Valve came in, gave them a bit of money and a little bit of promotion, and then immediately dropped them at CES. So I think maybe they overstepped their promotion a little bit. But
I was with them the night that they overstepped this promotion. It was one of those like, hey, it's a preview night of all the stuff you have to wander around the floor and see. So anyhow, I think we want to move on.
Yeah,
a little bit late in this.
We're running a little long. Let's hear from Christian.
Christian.
Hello there.
There you are, Christian. Sorry, I was looking at my little windows down there, and you're sitting so still.
Statuesque.
Where are you reaching us from?
I'm reaching you from Burlington, Vermont.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Actually, I'm a graduate student at Champlain College up here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Or best of luck, or how was the suffering? I don't know which one to ask you. So.
All the above.
Just clap.
It's going pretty well. Thesis is coming along slowly, but should be fun. But I actually have a question for you that's more along the lines of more of a concept question than like some more poignant, interesting problem that relates to current news. In your time as playing a lot of video games and stuff like that, have you ever come across some really good examples of ludonarrative dissidence?
Oh, the great ludonarrative dissonance. And this is obviously when the game gives the sense of choice, but actually the game, by being a directed experience, runs contrary to sort of that promise. Are we all in the same meaning of ludonarrative dissonance? Or?
I think so. I think the go-to example is you taking hundreds of like bullets to the torso in Uncharted, and then you get shot once in a cutscene, and he stumbles and passes out. That's a pretty iconic example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I
believe the classic example was BioShock, which made it act like you were in this objectivist world. You could make all these these choices to determine your future, but the game really only allowed you this limited amount. I still think BioShock actually played with that concept more than was kind of in denial of it. So for that description I just said, I haven't seen, I think, a ton of examples to what Nick described where the events in the narrative and the events in the gameplay don't seem to square up. That's fairly pervasive, but I'm seeing better and better corrections for it. Even like small touches in Grand Theft Auto 5 seem to really deal with that kind of jarring moment when you're thrown out of the game because, gameplay and story don't seem to match up.
Winston Sickle in the chat says, we need a new word for how yellow that room is. Ludopaintive consonants.
So
It's actually an orangey peach, but...
It works.
Christian, so do you feel that you've encountered what you would term ludonarrative dissonance in the games you played?
I've come across quite a few, but my sort of go-to example that I've been using to sort of explain to my friends to try to justify my thesis idea is in the most recent Tomb Raider game, you take control of Lara Croft for a little bit, and you get the objective: go kill a deer. Okay, I'll go kill a deer. So you go, you kill a deer, and there's you manage to accomplish this, and all of a sudden Laura just has this sort of swooning cutscene where it's just sort of like, oh no, I'm sorry. She apologizes to the deer, and it's all very interesting. Then all of a sudden, like less than 15 minutes later, you're suddenly shooting cultists and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you have this situation where it's like, okay, well, Laura was sorry for killing a deer, yet we don't have any sort of feedback for how she's feeling about killing these cultists.
Right when that starts, there's this one throwaway line you hear from, it's like, I don't mean to hurt anybody. It's right there when the combat starts. Not that that excuses anything that follows. Don't get me wrong, Christian. But yeah, it is.
That's something that I keep seeing is the one-line throwaway line to excuse the 10 hours of violence afterwards. Even Bioshock Infinite was a little bit guilty of that. With you have that conversation with Elizabeth where she's like legitimately freaked out that you murdered all those dudes, and that's kind of it for the rest of the game, except for sometimes you'll do an execution on someone and she'll be like, that was gross. But that's kind of I'm not the one-liner to explain away the violence is better than ignoring it, but in some ways I feel like it makes it more jarring when you don't acknowledge it later.
Right, it just sort of cheapens the idea because again, you still have that situation where yes, she charges in and goes, I don't mean to hurt anyone, but you're still hurting them, and you have these very somewhat gruesome executions from what I've heard, because unfortunately I haven't actually played the game.
I reviewed it, and yeah, it gets worse. It gets worse in the dissonance. The plot made actually no sense to me. I ended up giving it a 2 out of 10. It gets really confusing at some points.
Right.
Well, how do you go beyond that, though? I mean, most of these games, you're killing so many people, you're on essentially a psychopathic rant.
Yes.
There'd be no way to have a character that was anyone like you and I going into a situation like that.
The guy who wrote Spec Ops: The Line, that was kind of the solution he came to. He gave a speech, I think, at GDC where he was like, stop trying to make these characters likable, make them psychopaths, which is a good stopgap solution, but you can kind of only do that trick once. I don't think we can have every game be about a psychopath losing his sanity.
Or it's a question of how much story do you want to put in it. Serious Sam, there's no dissonance there. It's stupid, it's fun, he's he's this kind of character. Whereas I do think that if you look at a game like Last of Us, at least the circumstances feel so desperate that even though I actually think that what is the gentleman's name in
Joel?
Joel, thank you. I think he is actually a sociopath, excusing, he's actually trying to hide his urges under, with this idea of protecting, the young girl. But I think the issue is that Tomb Raider wanted to tell a deeper story, but couldn't also alter the gameplay to be consistent with that. And so I wouldn't call that ludonarrative dissonance. I call it dissonance. It just doesn't, the two things just don't square up. I don't think it's so much the fault of the game. It's that you almost had two elements of the game that ran parallel to one another, and just there was no real effort at the outset to figure out how they were going to merge. Because I actually really like, the gameplay of Tomb Raider is a lot of fun to play. The story didn't get deep enough for me, and it didn't really start to explore. I would love to have this idea that she actually became a cold, calculated killer, and it just didn't seem to want to cross that line.
Right.
One thing I gotta say about Bioshock Infinite, though, is there is that one point with Elizabeth with the scissors.
Yes.
Her facial expression, that was one of the most effective, not animation sequences, but
Yeah.
moments in games I think I have ever experienced.
And you know, I also think that was very important and pertinent to the plot. I do think that one can make the case that maybe she wasn't as reactive with her horror for the first section of the game. But if you go back to when you find her in the tower, and they're showing the stages of her
The blood,
of her maturation, obviously one of the key ones where she seems to have all her powers is when she starts to menstruate, which one could look at as a first blood. Now what happens with the scissors would be the other variant of that, and she suddenly becomes more womanly, and that's when she changes her clothes. She becomes a lot more revealing. I mean, I really do feel that at least within Bioshock Infinite, there was a lot of attention paid to what the violence does, but there might have been longer stretches where we needed to kind of be reminded about that throughout it.
Fair enough.
Christian, I think you've really started an excellent discussion, so I thank you very, very much.
Pleasure. I just have a quick question. Do you mind if I quote a little bit of this in my thesis?
I said it publicly, so it's fair game. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Dude, if you need any more for the Tomb Raider, hit me up, please. I'm on Game Informer as Paradigm the Fallen. I will help you out however I can.
I'm adding you to my circle as we speak.
All right, so look at that. Look, we probably make Google Plus happy in the process.
Social media. Let's hear from Locke Ramsey.
Locke, how are you?
There we go. My microphone has been unmuted.
Yes, and you did it without my having to tell you.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Awesome.
All right.
So,
somebody had to move my car, so I'm trapped in this room. Locke, where are you reaching us from?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, nice. Hey, Nick, do you know him?
Not necessarily, but I know
Nick's from
that,
North Carolina as well, and so actually my brother went to UNC, so I know a ton of people from North Carolina.
Which UNC? Which UNC?
The one in Chapel Hill.
Oh, because I'm at UNC Charlotte right now.
Okay.
So
I went to
that's
UNC
not obvious.
Yeah.
Nice.
It'd be really weird if you're at UNC Charlotte. No, you lived in Charlotte, but you went to Chapel Hill.
Yeah, that'd be a long commute. 3 hours there and back every day for class would get.
No, Chapel Hill's a ways
That's
away.
like making banana bread with broccoli.
Banana bread is delicious.
Yes,
Anyway.
That's a good question. Banana bread with broccoli, another sign of dissonance. Just throw it out.
That sounds gross. No.
This bread tastes quite funky. No wonder.
Banana bread with zucchini bread, though, that's good.
I will say this: it's probably better than my pea soup that I tried to make last week, which ended up more like pea paste.
Oh, you're proving yourself a grad student right there, Christian. So, Locke, other than adding vegetables to our pastries, what is on your mind?
Two things. One, I know I'm late to the party with this because I just forgot. I've been busy with college.
Party at any point. Don't worry about me.
Sorry, your roommate is peeking in through the door.
Okay, he knows. Anyway, I've been thinking about, like, when the Steam OS was announced, at first I thought it was just like, okay, this just looks like some other thing to play games on. But then I looked more into it, and I saw that because developers can start making games for the Steam OS, and it's supposed to be easier than for Windows, then I'm thinking, like, because I want to be eventually into the game development industry, and I'm thinking, like, well, are there going to be, like, development kits released publicly so that we can try to do stuff like that? I'm just interested in all the possibilities, really.
Well, I mean, the Steam OS will be free. So,
it will be free. Good.
And it's Linux-based, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Linux-based.
But that actually makes me think, if you're looking for open development kits, the Xbox One, they just announced they're not doing it for everybody yet, but they're going to be allowed so you can submit, supposedly, and they're going to give you a dev kit. Game Informer had a huge article on it in their magazine last night.
I mean, they're also claiming that the Xbox One itself is a dev kit. Just hook up a keyboard and you can program right into it. But the reason why they're handing out kits earlier is, well, most people don't have an Xbox One.
Yeah.
Whether or not that really comes to fruition, I think we have to wait and see when the console actually launches. I'm getting the sense, Locke, that you're wondering if you should become more you should learn more about the Steam OS because it might be something you want to program for.
Yeah, definitely, because it just sounds like you could easily it's easier to like I don't know if port's the word, but it's just easier to make games for the Steam OS. At least that's what Valve promises.
I think actually port is a very important word.
Okay.
Look, I imagine the Steam box is going to be big, but right now, if you're going to make a game that is computer based, you want to make sure it works with Windows. Your install base is very, very, very large. So if the Steam OS allows for a nominal cost in converting something that works on Windows or works on an Apple OS over to the Steam OS, then it's really all you're doing is expanding your base. You might have sort of you're on an OS and you're with a system that can help bring more attention to your product. But I mean, those are a lot of the questions that I think should have been presented by Valve. I mean, I found the whole thing they did with dribbling it out over the 3 days and not really showing anything or really not naming the AAA publishers that are with them, I found to be so curious. And why I'm not poo-pooing the Steam box. I just don't think that there's anything to really go on yet until we start to get some of the harder facts about how they're moving forward, who they're partnering with, and obviously what game developers and game publishers are getting on board. What year in college are you?
Freshman.
Yeah.
So yeah, first year.
Just give it 2 years. All of these will be answered in time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about what's happening with this.
A lot can happen in 4 years. So I'm just eager for the future. But the second thing I wanted to say was I think you can consider this a criticism of anything, but it's just the Rev3 Games review scores. I've always had a problem with a 5-point scale because it's 3, 4, or 5, and you never give 2s or 1s. And
I'm 2s. 1's very rare. A 1 would have to be something that is either appalling in its content or appalling in its technical execution.
So Postal 3.
All right, but basically,
Postal 3. Yes.
But basically, anyway. I saw a Reddit thread the other day talking about the Beyond Two Souls reviews, and a lot of them were in the mediocre range. They were between 3s and 4s and 7s or 6s and 8s, and it was why? I mean, and then I kept seeing some other I can't remember the names of these reviewers, but they were 3.5 out of 5 and 2.5 out of 5. I'm just specifically for the not BioShock, Beyond Two Souls review that Tara did. Even though there were some flaws, I feel if it's a 5 out of 5, it really needs to I mean, I just think why not make it 4 and 4.5 stars out of 5? I mean,
because we don't care about the numbers. I'm going to be frank, and if you follow,
I just a little bit more accurate.
Okay, but do you remember anything she said about the game?
Yes, I remember all the positives.
And why does that not carry more weight, or why than the number? If we could, we would dispense with those numbers, and you would actually have to okay, they seem to like that, they seem to not like that. I'm gonna, it's this obsession that somehow this evaluative. I mean, granted, you're in school and you kind of live or die by someone assigning a numerical or alphabetical assessment to what you're doing, but that's really, I think, actually, I've always thought that that's probably one of the worst aspects of American education, is that you kind of work towards this evaluation rather than try to submit something for the purposes of discussion and for contributing to a larger dialogue. Yeah. And this obsession about the numbers is if that actually matters. I could give a shit what David Cage thinks. I just it's we kind of said 5. Man, this game made me feel really good. 5. I would encourage you to have the experience that I had. And it's not. And the minute you say half, that's mathematical. And to me, that is just disingenuous. And I do the 5-point scale because I want to sometimes force hard decisions. How much do you really like it? How much do you not like it? Because if you have 0.5s, A, it's like math, and B, you just kind of get into a wishy-washy zone where you can always be very non-committal. You can have a 7.5 or an 8.5. If we have to have numbers, I want to force a discussion. But I would also like to force people to have to go back, read, or listen to what the person said to get that. I mean, it's terrifying to me when I go out on the internet, and that I imagine people haven't listened to the review or they haven't read the review. They went to the score because we're just this demented culture of exceptionalism that it's either it's great or it's bad, and that the whole purpose of art is to foster discussion and stuff like that. So I'm not going off on you or anything there.
No.
You've definitely caught one of those things I spent 15 years ruminating on. And,
it's fine.
That's one thing I That's one thing I have done. I started reviewing a couple games for the Computer Heart website. I worked on, and actually one of my ways around it was reviewing it technically twice. I had actually assigned how we normally review hardware a recommendation badge, so Gold Award, Silver Award, Editor's Choice Award, and so forth for how the game strikes me as an artistic or whatever content. For a numerical score, I would then base it solely on how broken the PC port is.
I did actually similar thing with
Speaking of PC port,
I assign a positive or a negative whenever I assign a score because there's a few I've reviewed. I've given them like 6.25, which is essentially my baseline for me, where 7 is for everybody else, and I'll say positive, negative. So yeah, I know what you mean.
So like if they were like in StarCraft 2 when they had that one point where you go through the mission bay and you can click on people and have dialogue, I'd give them bonus points on the numerical score because they try to make something that really struck the PC platform well, and it wasn't just a port from what the consoles did. They really tried hard on that version. Whereas if they have DRM...
But Scott, I mean, I guess I want to kind of call you out on one thing, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot there,
Okay.
but Scott, I gave them extra points. And that's the whole thing, is that if I do everything in my power, and I try to teach the people that work with me, don't think about the points. Don't start thinking about the interesting sentences that you're going to write about the game when you're playing it. And it's kind of like, have you ever been with those kind of guys when you go to a restaurant and they kind of sit there and evaluate the waiter and they decide how much they're deducting off the tip based upon the quality of the service they're getting, like a Reservoir Dogs, how much the coffee gets filled? That's not, it's not a gymnastics routine or some kind of, spelling bee where like, it's evaluative like that. It's kind of, games are supposed to be an experience, and we seem to be so determined to separate it into its various assets, evaluate them, and then try to aggregate that back into some sort of total. And, obviously, if I'm enjoying a game, that's when I start saying, okay, why am I enjoying this game so much? Is it because of the graphics? Is it because of the gameplay? Is it because of what kind of gestalt is actually taking place? And it's interesting, Scott, because you do come from sort of a hardware background, and I think where everything went kind of awry in game criticism is that they were first looked at as products rather than pieces of creation.
Yep.
And, like Ziff Davis was a hardware magazine. And so that kind of very regimented benchmarking rationale moved over to the games, and it's taken the better part of a decade to kind of start to move further and further away from that thinking. And I would just encourage all of you, I think we should have as much criticism as possible, but think of criticism not in the is it good or bad, but in the I am bringing my thoughts to bear upon what the contribution of this game is into the larger cultural spectrum. It makes games more relevant, and it makes, I think, a lot of people in the gaming community look a lot more respectable, for lack of a better word, because we're not creating those numbers out there. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I thought about the badges, too, where you'd have an award, because you wouldn't be worried about rank ordering stuff if you give anything that you really found a lot of pride in, choice award or whatever.
I kind of like what Kotaku's been doing, where they just end every review with, should you play this game? Yes, maybe, or no, and an explanation of why. Because that solves the problem of giving you a useful assessment without sticking a kind of arbitrary number to it. Like, I think people need to remember that a 5 out of 5 doesn't mean perfect at all.
No.
It just means perfect for them.
Don't tell the crazy guy that makes videos about me about that. But yes, it doesn't mean perfect. Trust me, he's out there. He might be joining us as we speak. Hey, Nick, I don't know if we can get to everybody. I'm feeling really, really bad. Do you want to bring both of our last two windows in?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk to Jaren and Kevin simultaneously.
Hello?
Jaren, Kevin, I'm so sorry that we are totally running out of time. I'm going to try to push this out a little bit, but there's two people waiting at this window that need me to move my car so they can get out.
Oh, okay.
But let's see. Do either of you have anything you wanted to talk about that did not involve Valve or a Steam box?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about, well, you were talking a little bit about Beyond Two Souls, but I wanted to mention my feelings about it, because I haven't played it yet, but I have been watching walkthroughs of it, and
wouldn't that ruin it for you? I mean, were you planning on playing it?
Yeah, I was planning on playing it also, but I feel conflicted about it because I don't know whether part of me wants to like it, but then there's other parts of me that feel disappointed by it because I enjoyed Heavy Rain, but with this one, I just don't like the way it's arranged because it feels like the way that the story is kind of out of order. It feels like David Cage is trying to make his own Pulp Fiction, and it's not working out that way.
Well, I mean, disjointed narrative or narrative like that does not originate with Pulp Fiction. I mean, it's
that's just an example I could think of.
But one good reason that you wouldn't want to do a complete linear narrative like that is it can become really tedious. That you want to have a freshness, or you want to have that sense of contrast that, like, okay, how did this person get there, and you work back. I think one of my favorite examples is Don DeLillo's Underworld. Not his best book by any means, but the way that he plays with time and sequence gives you the drama that I think would be lacking in it, actually.
Sometimes it feels like the random events make it feel like the out of orderness. It makes me feel a bit confused, and it kind of takes me out of it and makes me scratch my head at it.
I guess, but Jaron, I guess my only thing is, especially with the David Cage game, and you have to get I think this. Oh, I think we lost you. Oh no, there you are.
Okay.
That to not play it and just to watch it, you really are taking a lot of what that experience is supposed to be, because he does create that sense of tension in those controls. And I really disabuse anybody of just watching a video of a game and thinking that they can sort of hold an opinion about it. I also realize that games cost money and that you want to investigate it in it, but I have not. I planned on playing Beyond last night, and it turned out my wife didn't have to work, and so I was a good husband.
Okay.
And it's I recommend that to all of you when the opportunity presents. Sometimes put away the work and watch a crappy movie or go have dinner together. But I would say if you have a chance, see if you can get your hands on the game without having to pay the full $60. And I'd love you to come back on and tell me what you thought about it after your initial.
Because there were other topics that I wanted to discuss with you, but there's just no more time.
No, unfortunately, and I'm going to try to get to Kevin, because Kevin, I can't single you out. I would feel like a bad man. So as long as it's not about Steambox, or Valve, or Half-Life 3, I'm willing to entertain your query.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
There we go.
Okay. It's about video game movies. Do you think now that? No, I mean about like how now. I think they're now taking it serious now, since with the upcoming Assassin's Creed movie and also the upcoming Deus Ex movie.
I wouldn't say they're taking it seriously. Here's my two reasons. Actually, the movie that might be the one that could change everything is actually the World of Warcraft movie, because there's so much money being put behind it by Legendary, and Duncan Jones, who for whatever reason decided to start following me on Twitter. So hello there, man. Is directing it. He's a very interesting director, having made the movie Moon and that Jake Gyllenhaal movie, which I'm blanking on the name of, but was really good, actually.
Prince of Persia.
Here's the thing about the Assassin's Creed movie. I'm under the impression that entire thing is being financed by Ubisoft. Sony Pictures is handling it, but there's a very strange deal where Ubisoft gets to sign off on everything with this movie well past when it's into post-production. That kind of a deal does not exist. It's insane. No one would risk that much money and let a third party be able to jettison the movie at the 11th hour, unless all of the financing and all of the financial risk was being carried by the third party. That could mean it's a really good thing, or it could mean that the wrong people are making the movie. I honestly don't know which. I don't know enough about Deus Ex. What we are seeing is that more interesting game properties are getting a cinematic treatment, because those games kind of carry a little bit more thought to what they're about. This isn't kind of Hitman. Hitman actually is an interesting game, but I think you guys see where I'm going. I think the issue that's going to come, especially with Assassin's Creed and with Deus Ex, is movies can't tell those stories right. Those stories were based on spending a lot of time in the world and in the narrative for hours upon hours upon hours. And I think when we all see those things that we really love condensed to 2 hours, the cliff notes to keep the group of people that don't like these games happy, because apparently that's the audience you need to reach, I think it's actually going to prove something of a disappointment. I think World of Warcraft has more potential because there's no real. I mean, the story in World of Warcraft is so threadbare to begin with that they can just invent their own thing, and it just takes place inside of that world. So
what about the books?
I don't mean to disappoint you with that, but that really is my take on it.
It's fine. It's fine that like around like a couple of months ago, like the one of the writers who's co-writing the movie did Sinister, and he mentioned that he's making a cyberpunk movie, and also he did research on it by playing the game Human Revolution first about a couple of times.
I mean, that's yeah. Clear. I mean, if they want to do the cyberpunk route, Human Revolution probably is the way to go. Look, also another thing is when you read interviews with people who are making movies, remember you have tens of millions of dollars that are they're banked against this. I would love to think everything that's said is sincere, but if you don't think it's going through a publicist first, and that these guys who have been given the tens of millions of dollars do not want to piss off the very powerful people that afforded them that luxury, it's just I'm sad about being a horrible cynic about it, but just being at the ass end of the cable industry and sort of the bullshit that I was sometimes had to spin, I can only imagine what happens when it comes to movies. Man, that was a cynical way to end Address the Staff.
I have one really.
You know what would be less cynical is if we did a bunch of plugs right now. Really
okay,
quick.
we're going to plug a lot of stuff. Guys, hopefully we have more people here than we did when we started. If you have not seen Bringing Up Nick, the second episode is going up on Friday. You need to see the first one where Nick here is shown Aliens for the first time. He has never seen it. He watches it, and he and I have a discussion. I'm in love with this show. It's only available on the Revision 3 site. It's at revision3.com/games. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. I hate to say this. Please tell a friend. We're trying to see if we can get a lot of traffic going on the Revision 3 site, and if that happens, that might open up some really interesting creative opportunities further down the line. So you guys, as loyal people who would even bother to hear me yammer for an hour, I implore you to show even more fealty and go out there and proselytize on my behalf. And Nick's. Because Nick, I mean, he's young. He needs hope. Give him the hope that I am tearing down every day with my cynical evaluations.
There is no hope.
It's a great first episode.
Also, please check out Tara Long's great review of Beyond Two Souls. It definitely cut against the popular grain of a lot of other reviews, but I stand by it 100% because, man, I trust that lady. Okay.
Adam, there is something really fast I wanted to mention. I came up with a great idea. For Quantic Dream's next game, I want it to star Bryan Cranston.
I like that, but I also want it to be completely done in pantomime because that will solve a lot of the problems. Okay? All right, with that, I thank you all. We're going to be doing this next week again, but we are going to be doing an international version. So within the United States, it's going to happen earlier in the morning, but we're going to see if we can get some of those people on those other continents to come and join us. We tried it once to limited success. We're going to try it again because, you know, it's the internet, the inter of national. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. Always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Adam.